Yeah, this is Jordan Dyer with LFS Chemistry.
Appreciate you coming on the program here today. We've got a fantastic interview in store today because we're going to talk a little bit about some issues as we wind down 2019, a year in review, decade in review. Dave, how you doing today, sir?
Great. How are you?
Doing excellent here, winding down the year, the decade. First, before we get into, the shift change, the retirement issue, and the startup/capitalism that is still around in the energy industry, one of the last places that's still around, give you guys a nice little plug, let people know what you guys do in the energy industry, because we appreciate you coming on today's program.
Sure. Yes, we are a new startup completions chemical-focused company. My background personally is in the completions chemical business, and some of our key core founding members, their background is the same, and we just saw this time as an opportunity to bring something different and really a fresh approach to the market and focus on service and quality and really customer-oriented business. That's what I believe we want to drive out here. So creating a true friendship, relationship, partnership, not just you're selling something to a customer, but you're selling something to a friend. So I think that's what we do our business.
You really hit a lot of key phrases there that I've been hearing over the past year, actually probably the past 3 years when it comes to your chemical industry, which would be a very competitive, aggressively competitive niche part of the oil and gas industry. And I'd like to get your thoughts on the competitive nature behind the chemical industry. But I've interviewed probably, a dozen chemical companies in the past 3 years. And the thing that I've heard over and over again is there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there in the chemical world. And so a lot of companies are coming to companies and saying, hey, you're an ethical company we've done business with, or you're an ethical guy that we've done business with. Can you help us out here? And to me, that sounds a lot like what you guys experienced.
Right, yeah. So I think that the industry has been kind of plagued with what you described right there as snake oil salesmen, or, promoting something that it's not, charging, way outside of market price or value, what the chemistry is actually worth. And, I think that we look at it like, you have a problem. We would like to provide a cost-effective solution. We're not out here trying to sell, a high-end Cadillac at, an astronomical price whenever, just the market is not there. We try to provide something that is competitively priced, and, I think our goal is to recover every drop of hydrocarbon that's left in a reservoir in source rock. So I think we look at the rock very differently. I think we focus on true fundamentals. I think we focus on economics and science, real science. I don't think we push anything that's not proven. I don't think we over-promote. I don't think we under-promote. I think we provide value at a fair price. That's my goal, and I think that's the company's goal ultimately.
It seems like the meek are inheriting the industry as a lot of the, chuck and jivers, the snake oil salesmen. They kind of really painted a picture, whereas a lot of the people who are uncomfortable painting that false picture kind of got left out in the weeds for 2-3 years. And now it sounds like the companies are coming back around. Talk to me a little bit about how that is dealing with the midstream operators, the producers, the ones who got to kind of come back. And I know it's not hat in hand, so to speak, but what's it like dealing with them when they've been kind of chuck and jived and kind of taken advantage of?
Yeah, I think that everybody in this space really knows, what's been around, and they really go back to just fundamentals of what has worked in the past for 30, 40, 50 years and what makes sense for them and their business today. I think that there was some experimentation in the industry 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, even earlier than that, on trying different things. And and I think that there are operators open for trying different things as well, and there's nothing against, trying something new. As a matter of fact, I would encourage that. I think companies get set in their ways sometimes, and they don't want to move or shift. And there's some companies that go and bet the farm on a new technology. I think we're probably somewhere in between that. I think we view it as, hey, I think the good old-fashioned way of doing business in knowing what you're talking about, knowing your product, knowing what you're selling, that goes a long ways. Be an expert in your space. Don't try to be everything to everybody. I think people really do appreciate that. I think that speaks volumes to, your character and what you really mean and what you stand for. So that's us. That's what we believe in, So
I'm trying to think of the three gentlemen that used this phrase on my program about 5 years ago, and I know Ron Gibson from Questar was one of them. I want to say Lee Tillman from Marathon Oil, and then maybe it was Lauren Scott, who's a economics advisor for the industry, and also Louisiana State University. And what they said was herd mentality. One of the biggest detriments and the cons to the energy industry or the oil and gas industry is the herd mentality. Because sometimes, when there's not necessarily the best idea for the industry, the herd mentality still exists. And I'm wondering how much of that's going on right now. How much of the, because we're really in uncharted waters. You've got 6, 7, 8, 9 presidential candidates trying to ban fossil fuels. You've got states passing their own local templated smoking ban and public health ban laws. And it just seems like there's so much going on that the industry isn't a time where they need to try new things. And so, you're not going to bat 100%, you're not going to bat 1,000 here.
Right.
But how much of this herd mentality is going on here? Do you know what I mean by that?
Well, I kind of do. I mean, can you elaborate further on that?
Well, herd mentality is like everybody just kind of rushes towards something. It's like, okay, well, everybody's got to get away. Like in the media, everybody's got to get online. Okay, well, everybody invested millions of dollars online, then went out of business. And I laugh because I tell people all the time, the worst business move I ever made in my life was going on the internet, because I lost so much money. I will never make the amount of money I invested back on the internet. And all the newspapers, they're still trying to recoup the millions they put into the internet. So that was a herd mentality thing. We all did it before we had a plan.
I hear you on that, and I think I'll speak to that a little bit here. Here's what I think. I think, what's really popular right now in the media is to bash the heck out of the oil and gas industry. I think it's extremely popular. I think people love talking about it. I think it's fun. It's jazzy. The next newest bankruptcy, 800 employees laid off here or there, or 130 over there. I think that's what's popular, and that's what people want to talk about. I think that people, while they're talking about all of this going on in our industry right now, there are guys building businesses right now. There are guys that are really, really successful right now that run great businesses. And so I think the industry gets kind of blindsided by, oh, it's terrible, and nobody's going to make any money over here doing this or that or the other. And meanwhile, you have a select few that are putting their head down, their nose to the grindstone, and they're working hard, and they're passionate about their business, and they're building something special. And I think those are the ones you got to watch and look out for. And I think that's what maybe we are, and that's what I think what we're trying to be is, we are not getting lost in the confusion of, it's such a bad market. It's challenging, but there's always great opportunities that come out of, challenges like these. So, yeah,
I've mentioned this before, that there's still money circulating around the planet. And sometimes you just got to reinvent your steak sandwich, and you got to figure out a way to get people to know about your steak sandwich. And that's tough. We live in a time where access right now is worth more than money, because the people who have access to the dollars and the laws and the regulations, those are the ones running the show right now. And Colorado will be the first one to tell you how easily government can change an industry. And
and that's really sad too, right? So Colorado tries to push an anti-fracking ban, a moratorium essentially on our industry. New York has done the same. I think, if you look at New York, just look at the problems they're facing today. Right across the state line, you've got Pennsylvania and places booming. Meanwhile, you've got a pipeline trying to go into New York. They can't supply enough gas to the people in the state of New York, and it's a shame. It's anti-industry. It's anti-capitalism. And you know what? I like clean air and clean water just like anybody else. But I'm also for a low cost of living and a low cost of energy. And so I just think that the whole narrative of climate change and this is just, there's not a lot of sound science to it, number one. And it's really anti-American. It's anti-industry. And so I just wish that Republicans and Democrats would look at it differently, instead of the country being so polarized the way it is today, So it's almost like you can't be left, you can't be right. You have to be so far left, or you have to be so far right that you can't even sit at the dinner table and have a conversation anymore. You can't talk about who's in office, because everybody is going to get upset about one tweet this way or the other. And that's sad where we're at in society, where we can't just sit down and say, hey, we can agree to disagree, or I respectfully, I like these policies or those, that's just unfortunate.
The reason why actually I've heard that over and over again, that was the reason why the Crude Life a number of years ago actually said we were non-political, because you couldn't even turn on SportsCenter to get the Colorado Rockies score without being told how to feel about the national anthem. It's a sports center, for crying out loud. Now all of a sudden I'm in the middle of a political debate. So the Crude Life, we decided to go non-political. And now this next year we're gonna venture into a little bit of politics, because you can't talk energy now without being political. And it doesn't matter if you're political or not. People just assume you are. And so I totally agree with what you're saying. The one part that really concerns me, and this is the thing I want everybody in the oil and gas industry to understand, because I've been trying to tell this for 5 years now. The way that the leaders are using children is extremely dangerous. Now, right now, they have the UN has handpicked I think she's 14 or 16, Greta Thunberg, and she's got Asperger's, and she's going around the country, or around the planet, talking about how the world's going to end in 10 years unless we submit ourselves to the UN. And that's loosely saying it, but in order to fall into these regulations and pay this high taxes, if we don't do it, the planet's going to end. What's happening when they do that is they're making anxiety cool. And that really concerns me, that kids today in Fargo, North Dakota, they had a climate change summit where a bunch of kids went before the city leaders and demanded they declare a climate emergency, because they want to live to be 30, 40, and 50 years old. You got junior high and high school kids this worked up that they really believe the planet's going to end in 30, 40 years. Now, that should not be enabled. The UN, the leaders, the media should not be enabling that level of anxiety. That's kind of my issue with all this. One of them, I guess. But I'd like to know your thoughts about that, and how easily children are being used against fossil fuels.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the media, and it's terrible. I think it's almost disgusting, but they do an excellent job of grabbing youth, children. They own Hollywood, and they all get on the same page, right? It's almost verbatim. this is an existential threat to our society, and we have to do something about it right now. And really, if you look at that, those are the drivers behind the weakness in capital into our space, is because it's a top-down driven market, and the climate change conversation has pushed so hard into anti-oil and gas rhetoric that it is detrimental. And I guarantee you, the hydrocarbon is not going away anytime soon. Natural gas is not going away anytime soon. There are hundreds of millions of lives that depend on low cost energy that for heating and plastics, pharmaceuticals, a number of industries that depend on what we do. And I wish that people were more educated on the matter, that thought a little deeper and harder about what they said before they said something, because it would go a long ways. I mean, if you just do a little research and you think about how you get to work every day, I don't care if you're driving a Prius or not. Guess what? That Prius is charged by electricity, but I guarantee it's probably powered somewhere by a natural gas powered power plant or coal, or I mean, people do not think about the rubber on the tires on the Prius. Where does that come from? I mean, the clothes on our back. I mean, it's in everything that we do. It's in everything that we touch and see, and it's in hospitals. It's all around us. And so, to be so anti-oil and gas is to almost be un-American.
But that just shows you where they're at. I mean, to me, I think the closest thing that I can attribute it to is somebody who's against corporate farming and then goes to the store and buys hamburger, where they're so far attached from how a hamburger gets on their plate, yet they'll turn around and protest against the things that allow it to happen. That blows me away, is how easily we can become detached on those types of things, And that's what I mean by using children. Their hypothalamus isn't even developed till they're 25. I mean, there's a reason we have drinking laws and adult laws, is because it has to do with the physical, biological formation of the brain. And to use children who are not equipped with critical thinking abilities or questions to go against something like that, where you're just producing fear and anxiety in a way that is authoritative, that's
right.
That's in other forms that's criminal, but not apparently if you're an elected leader. It's cool.
Right. Yeah, no, it's popular. Yeah. No,
so, I also wanted to ask you about the big shift change coming, the crew shift happening, because within the next 3 years, something like 70% of the industry will be retired. There'll be a new shift change, and during the 90s, there was a decade of low oil prices. They got as low as $8. I want to say they hovered around 30 for a long time, but there was a decade of non-hiring. So during the 2000s, when the boom came back, there was a mixture of Gen Y, Gen X, millennials, just that kind of all got ushered in. 3 different generations of education on fossil fuels. Interesting, And so
Sure.
this is another one of my concerns, is the vetting process that's going on right now. I'm not sure that the energy companies are doing as good of a job as I would hope they would have done. And what I mean by that is there's a certain level of respect that needs to be understood that the energy industry has developed over the past 100 and some years. They have 100 and some years of developing a relationship with the land, with innovation, with the land owners, with states on how to do things, with education systems on how to create a little bit more of an educational safety training system that's going to make the industry better. I mean, this has been going on for 100 years, and I'm not sure everybody quite has an understanding of that because of that decade of downturn, if you will. Your comments on the crew shift change, the retirement issue, and then, my observation about that hiring issue that came with it, where, there's a generational gap.
Yeah, it's sad. The industry pretty much got robbed there, right, for 10 plus years, as you mentioned, and then there's a lot of fear to go into it with the swings associated with oil and gas. So, but I think that the crew shift change that's going on now, it creates opportunities, right? So, you've got a lot of folks that are retiring right now. We're going to lose a lot of experience, but by the same token, you've got graduates coming out of college, and they can find a job in this industry, and they can build a career and a business for themselves. It's entrepreneurial by heart, by nature, I think, the oil and gas businesses. And I just, imagine the old wildcatting days and truly going out and drilling a well in the middle of nowhere and hoping it's a boom and hopefully not a bust, right? But, it's fascinating. It can be fun. And, but, you're right. There's a big gap. It's got to be filled. And the kids that come out of college today, they weren't taught, how to use tools, right? How to turn a crescent wrench or, swing a hammer. I mean, simple things like that. I don't think they understand the nuts and bolts of the industry the way, the boomer, quote unquote, generation does. I don't think they have the work ethic either, to be honest with you. I don't think they work half as hard as the folks before them. And so, I think that's got to change. I think that there's kind of an entitlement issue or problem with some fresh graduates, and they all want to, come out of school and make, $100,000 a year, and, everything's just going to be handed to them. I think you got to dig your heels in, and you got to work hard, ultimately. I think no matter how smart you are, you've got to continue to grind. And I think it pays off. It pays dividends down the road. But, if you're willing to put in the work and the time and the effort, I think it will come to fruition, and it may not be that perfect job that you want right out of school, but it's a start in an awesome industry that's got a lot of fascinating people in it. I think that's what I'm pleased the most with is the people in the industry. I mean, they're tough. They don't take no for an answer. They're determined. They work hard. They've seen the ups and downs of the industry, and they're willing to stick it out because at the end, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, there's always something cool to work for and grow towards, and so I think that's our industry. I mean, you pull yourself back up by your bootstraps and you get to work. So that's why I love it so much.
It's definitely not an industry that is inside the box, even though they keep trying to put it inside the box. I mean, every 10 feet you go, the soil could be different. I mean, right. That's what I mean. That's what I don't think people understand is there are just some things that just don't adhere to policy. Mother Earth does not care about lawyers. They don't care. She doesn't care about policy, and I think that gets lost sometimes, and that's the part I really enjoyed about the energy industry is that their fluidity and their nimbleness, if you will, to adapt and be innovative to solve problems so quickly. I mean, I'm just blown away at the innovation that has come out of this energy industry, and it's been refreshing to hear you talk in a very positive way. There's a lot to not be positive about right now. Like I said, there's layoffs happening every day in the news, yet here's a true capitalist at heart saying, hey, that just means there's more opportunity for me.
That's right. That's right. You nailed it. I mean, that's exactly right.
So go ahead. Yeah, talk about that opportunity, how you're going to go out there and get it.
Yeah, that's right. So opportunity can sometimes invent itself out of thin air, and I think you always got to be looking for it, right? I mean, you always got to be thinking ahead, whether it's our customer or some piece of technology that can help differentiate us. I think you got to have something. You know, you got to have a niche, and then you got to really focus on that and capitalize on it. You know, and if you can prove some value to your customers, whether it's help them save $1 or help them make money faster. I mean, I joke around with people, about that all the time. Like, my value is, if I can't save you $1 or if I can't help you make money quicker, then ultimately, what am I doing? That's really what it comes down to. Can I help you save money, or can I help you make money? And that's really providing value or a solution. So, if you look at chemistry, like, our goal is to help make a better oil well. I mean, that's what we're about. We are about the science and the rock and recovering hydrocarbons. We want to try to squeeze everything we can out of it. I think that's important. You talk about science or you talk about geology, not every basin is different. The Midland Basin is different from the Delaware Basin. It's different from the Central Basin platform. I mean, you got complex geology under our feet. It's got to be looked at, analyzed. A lot of R&D's got to go into it. Just like you said, the soil's not the same from 10 feet to the left as it is 10 feet to the right. And I think as you go back and you really take an in-depth look at the rock, I think you can fine-tune some chemistry to the mineralogy, to shale, to carbonate, to sands. I mean, you can really adapt and optimize your process and your efficiencies and really create something compatible downhole. That's our pitch, and so, I don't want to go too far into the weeds here, but it's complex. The rock is challenging to work with, but there's a lot of benefits to really taking an in-depth approach and look at your reservoir and not just pumping the same old thing or pump where everybody else is pumping, or the guy to the left is doing this or the guy to the right is doing that. I mean, sit down and really take some time. I think that's what this industry needs right now, so.
And how can people get in touch with you? Let people know if they want to get a quote or find out some more about some of the chemistry you guys are offering there.
Sure, yeah. So you can reach me at my cell phone, 432-770-2334, or you can go to our website at lightningfluids.com.